Welcome to Tarmac. I'm Dave.
I'm Matthew, and this little fiery red thing behind us is the Abarth 595 Competizione.
Competizione. So with an Italian flair and Italian feel. Finally something that matches my dark skin and my size, compact size. Come, let's take a look at this one. So with 7 decades of motorsport history to draw from, the Abarth has certainly got a name and certainly a reputation to live up to. So you may well ask, what's the 595 Competizione got to really live up to those standards? Well, let's take a closer look. Even for me, squatting down, it's actually really small. It's cute though. Look, this is the 4th generation Fiat 500 or 595. Comes with a nod to the old and embraces some of the new modern car features. Well, some of them anyway. Obviously the Abarth logo, unmistakable. The Scorpione, I'm going to be speaking in a lot of Italian, which is basically ending every word with oni and e. It comes with LED lights. The front dam, as you'll see, is like this tar grey, but if you look in there, it's got Abarth written through here. And also fog lights around here as well. So lots of nice textures, lots of contrasting colours to this is the Abarth red, but it's actually, if you look through the colour charts, there are a whole heap of other colours that have pasta and, I don't know, Italian ideas and concepts around it. The yellow one's pretty one to look for as well. Around the side, 17-inch feet, again with the Scorpione. 4-pot brakes, which are Brembos, which is cool, and also under here Koni Shocks, front and rear. This is a front wheel drive, as we'll show you when we're driving. Looking further down, lovely Abarth graphics, wing mirrors in tar grey with this actually really tactile finish to them. It's really nice. If it was the C, it would come with the old pool sunroof. This one doesn't. This is the non-C. Again, Abarth 595 badge. Nice wheels down the back. Around the rear, roofline spoiler, which is actually lower than me. It's awesome. Again, the tar grey surround for the badge, and around here, not the largest boot space in the history of mankind, but certainly the smallest parcel shaft. Look at that. Wouldn't get my subwoofer in there. And also quad exhaust tips that are linked to the Record Monza sports exhaust that rasps and makes so much noise. That in turn is attached to the engine. Let's have a look at that. It's a tiny looking 1.4 litre turbo that offers 132 kilowatts and 250 newton meters of torque. It's actually really nippy. 0 to 100 is just over 6 seconds, which is really not bad for this tiny little car, especially because you're so low to the ground. You feel like you're going 1,000 miles an hour anyway, and the car is the size of my thumb. Speaking of the size of my thumb, let's have a look inside and Matthew will show you around there.
Speaking of the size of Dave's thumb, the interior is quite tiny, just like that. I mean, I'm sitting fairly comfortably in here, but what you can't see is how little headroom there is above me. But luckily the driver does get height adjustment for his seat, which is a good touch. Now, speaking of the seats, they say Abarth on them, and they have these little aluminium sort of cutouts in them, and they are made of the softest leather. It's just incredible, and it's just as well because that suspension is quite hard, as we'll show you later on. You know my fixation with scratchy plastics. Well, I have to say that this car is a nightmare for me, basically. The top of the doors, well, they are scratchy plastics. The bottom of the doors, also scratchy plastics. Top of the dashboard, that's scratchy plastics. The panel that goes across the dashboard that says 500 on it, it's not scratchy as such, but it's a coarse plastic. I like the different sort of textures that they're using. And then you go below that and you get some more scratchy plastics, and then around the buttons for the gearbox as well, you get some more scratchy plastics. Speaking of which, Let's take a look at that gearbox. You will notice that this is quite an unorthodox looking automatic gearbox. Well, let me take you through it. So, to go into drive, you press 1, and this stands for neutral, and that's what you press to go into park, which you then have to put the handbrake up. R is reverse, obviously, and this button here, this is pretty important because this switches between the automatic and the manual modes, and there's quite a difference, as we'll show you later on. Speaking of really important buttons, let me draw your attention to these 3 across the dashboard here. They're shaped in this way so that it's an homage to the original Abarth 595. But the most important one of these 3 buttons is that says Sport right there. And this button is so important because when you push that, firstly, the turbo bar over there flashes a light that says Sport. Not only is that cool, but it actually does something, which is sharpen up the throttle response, stiffen up the shocks, the exhaust gets a bit louder, and everything sort of becomes so much more involving and so much more pantomime, if you like. There's a lot of drama to this car, and pushing that Sport button only makes it more dramatic. This Abarth comes with the Fiat Chrysler's famous U-Connect system, which is easy to use, though can be a little bit slow at times. The steering wheel is really cool because it's nice to hold, it feels nice and solid, and you get that little center marker right there for when you're on the track. And speaking of which, that is real carbon fiber. All of this you see in the steering wheel is real carbon fiber. How cool is that? You also get Alcantara as well, and Alcantara on the top of the dash over here. Again, the instrument cluster, nice and round and big, again an homage to the original 595 Abarths. In normal mode, you get a graphic of your Abarth sitting pretty in the middle of the road right there, along with, of course, your speed and your rev counter and your fuel gauge. But if you push that Sport button, everything sort of turns red and very angry, and you get a G-force monitor, and you get red markers for everything, and it's so cool. It's just angry, and it wants you to drive it hard. Before we go and test out all that exhaust and the noise, remember this is a 4-seater hot hatch. So let's see what the space is like in the back. Firstly, the good thing is that the doors open quite wide and they are quite long, so getting into the back here is not really a problem. But once you're in the back here, well, I'm, I guess, a fairly sizable human being, and my head is right up against the roof there. Also, the headrest kind of protrude into your back when you just sort of sit in. But on the plus side, the leather back here is extremely soft. It feels really nice to touch, and it's really comfortable on your back and on your legs. And you can actually fold these seats down, but because of the length of the car, it's unlikely to take your Swedish flat pack furniture. But anyway, this car is not meant for carrying around your desks and chairs and all that. It's meant for driving, and it's meant for hearing that exhaust. So let's take it for a drive and see what that turbocharged engine can really do.
What can be said about the 595 Competizione, the Abarth 595 Competizione? I'm just going to keep talking in Italian and pasta and cannelloni and stuff like that. It makes no sense, but you know, actually in many ways nor does this.
Just listen to Dave ramble on about his pseudo-Italian, if you like. But you see, it's hard to understand the point of this car because the Fiat 500 is a tiny car as we know it. It can't really fit 2 people in the back here, so it's almost like a hatchback coupe. But when you ram it in with a 1.4 liter turbo engine and these hard shocks and all this sort of excitement, you get something completely different.
It is. It's the fiery reds, the scorpion yellows, and all these different colours that, I don't know, that just light up your life. This is a fun car. It's sure, as Matthew says, there's hard plastics around. The gearbox is let's say an interesting. It's an event to drive. It's like a meal all in itself. But it's just, it can be forgiven for all of that because it's just an Abarth. It's just so much fun.
I mean, Dave's completely right here. It's a fun toy, if you like. It's just there for pure enjoyment and nothing else. Because the gearbox is quite, frankly, I'd say get the manual gearbox. The automatic is a bit iffy, but to really get the most out of it, you have to use those paddle shifts. It doesn't really know what to do by itself. But even with that, even with the slow shifts and all that, the noise that you get, and every time it downshifts, that little burble of the exhaust, all those things add to the drama aspect of this car, and that's really what it's about. It's just, as soon as you start it up, it revs really loudly, and everybody in the car park is staring at you like you're from outer space. It's just amazing.
So yes, it's small. You've got to like the person you're driving with. It's compact. It's great for driving around the town. It's going to get into, as you probably get to, into a parking space. It doesn't have a reversing camera, but it does have some beeps to help you get through. But there's that transmission. It has you nodding at everybody else as you change gear and stuff like that. If you want to do it, it's like it's got hiccups. You've eaten too much pasta, you've had too much red wine, and you've gone for a drive in this, and it's hiccuping. Probably didn't go for too much red wine, but you know what I mean. But if you move it into manual and use the pedals, you can get the gears going really nicely. Let's see if I can show you into there, changing the raspy sound of the exhaust. And then you feather the accelerator like you would with a manual car, which actually makes it more fun to drive. And boy, is this car fun to drive. It corners dramatically.
It's quite a narrow car and the center of mass is quite high, but those shocks keep the car really well grounded, and even when you're flinging it around corners and everything, you never feel like you're really pushing its limits. It feels confident, and it reassures you can take on these corners at speed.
The exhaust note, that Monza exhaust, is tremendous. If you're dropping down in gears, it just rasps and makes a nice big change, and just really enjoy the sound.
Think about it this way: other manufacturers use 1.4 litre turbos to save fuel and be gentle on the environment, but the 1.4 litre turbo in this car is an absolute weapon. The way it just pulls you, and the acceleration, the noise that comes through the exhaust, it doesn't feel like it's a 1.4 turbo at all.
So I'm in fourth gear at the moment, drop it down to third, and then drop it down to second. Lovely.
And there's no real turbo lag at all. Even uphill in third gear, all that kind of stuff, when you put your foot on the accelerator, you get instant power. It's not like they've made up for having a small engine with a big turbo.
The Koni shocks are really strong. They're really firm. The soft leather seats are a welcomed respite for it, but the reality is it is a firm ride all the way around.
There's no denying that. Even in the, I guess, normal mode, when you're driving over speed breakers and stuff like that, you can feel them quite clearly through the cabin.
They've thrown a lot into this car, considering it is the size of my thumb. You know, the sports exhaust, the sports shocks, the 4-pot brakes, the revved up engine, the Abarth tributes everywhere. It's really a great little vehicle. Just something different, and it's uniquely Italian. I mean, I think you want to have that Italian bent to want this.
Either that, or you're just after a fun sort of weekend car, then this is perfect in that respect. It's really exciting to drive, and it does make it's hard to argue a case for this being an everyday daily driver because of its hard shocks and everything. Though it is easy to park, I'll give it that. Really easy to park, in fact. And visibility is great all around with the big windows, but It might get a little bit irritating on a day-to-day when you're driving in traffic and the exhaust is droning on, but certainly on the weekends when you're hitting the back roads, this is the car that you want to be driving.
Seating wise, from a driving point of view, I would have preferred the steering wheel to come a little bit closer to me. My legs are, and I have short legs, already touching the center console. So look, I wouldn't go on a long GT run on this, even though they are saying it's got some GT-ness about it. I would prefer to have just this as a fun driving machine, and wow, it drives really good.
It's certainly quirky, I'll give it that, but it's the kind of car, you know, that you go into the showroom knowing you want this car, and knowing, rather than your head wanting it, it's something that your heart wants.
And your heart will want this. It's an Abarth, of course it is. It's as, I don't know, Italian as spaghetti, as pizza, and certainly plenty of topping. So there you have it, the Abarth 595 Competizione. It's just Italian through and through. It gives a nod to the 70 years past of its racing history, with a few hints of the future as well. It's a fun mobile if you like a hard ride, and who doesn't like a hard ride?
It's a dramatic pantomime car, but it's everything that Carlo Abarth set out to create when he created the Abarth brand all those decades ago, and I'm sure this is something he'd be proud of. Thanks for watching.
Make sure you subscribe, it'll be somewhere around here.
And hit that bell icon while you're at it.
See you next time.
Whoa.